Yeah. I'm so cool that like
it's too late to make that decision. You're 5 minutes late.
Yep. So just leave it. Let's go. Make sure your phone's turned down.
Let's do this. One of these times we're gonna go live before I do that. And Jim's gonna be like, hey, you can't do that. What?
This is one of those times.
Yes. All right. Are we all right? Welcome to the League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism, where we attempt to apply logic and reason to religion and politics. I'm here with my wonderful, beautiful co-host, Christy Santiago.
Happy Friday, everyone. We have a great show for you tonight. Some tough topics, but I think that, well, I might be speaking to an echo chamber in our particular chat tonight since we have such a small audience exactly right now. If everyone could share it out and we could reach one new person, the topics that we're going to talk about tonight, I feel are clouded and there's a lot of propaganda wrapped around them, and we would like to clear them up.
Yeah, so let's try and do that. But first,
yes,
I brought a book. I don't read books.
Is that Chuck Norris?
You might have seen that correctly, yeah.
Cannot be that.
So, for those of you who don't know, if when Chuck Norris breaks the law doesn't heal. Thank you, Chris. I can only hear like one laugh. Or two.
So good.
And yeah, here I want to give you like at least three, and then we'll actually move on. Chuck Norris puts the fun in funeral.
Oh goodness.
I get to see Christy's face. Everyone else has to wonder why I'm laughing at myself. And Chuck Norris keeps his balls in a holster and his dick in a guitar case.
I mean, who doesn't though? Honestly, I mean that's obviously what.
I keep him in a violin case. It's still bigger than most, but still. All right.
Are they detachable though? I mean, I was married to a man for quite some years.
Yeah.
I don't remember them being detachable.
Just one?
Just
I haven't
one
seen them
man,
all.
yeah.
Don't act like you know how the
I didn't try them all. No, there might be some that are detachable. You're right. My
There's
study
actually a
group is
song.
too small.
There's actually a song about that.
Oh no.
Detachable penis. All right. No, it's true. I didn't even make that one up.
All right. You have a couple really good things to touch on before we dive into our big.
Again, as long as I have consent, yes, I will touch
Yeah.
on them.
Yes.
So
Consent is hot as fuck, everyone. I just want you to know that, like, that consent of someone wanting you back is better than rape. So I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, I'm sorry. If I'm making out with somebody and they're literally trying to rip my eyes out telling me no, I'm like, if I had a female, if I had a she boner, it would go pew. So on LEAH, we think consent is hot AF, HAWT AF. And I don't think that's going to change.
That's another thing we're going to have to put on. We need to make a t-shirt for that.
Yes.
List.
Consent is hot AF.
Yes.
Yes.
AF.
AF.
All right. Amen. AF.
I don't know.
I'm actually going to start this topic now. I'm actually going to start this
serious
topic.
face.
Yes, you stop because I can't start if you don't. All right. Idol worship is the first topic for tonight. Because for those of you who don't know, I kind of hate nationalism, or blind nationalism at least, right? Because if you worship something because it's great, then that's just on its face, just circular reasoning, right? So I don't like when we just worship the flag because this is the greatest country on earth and that's our flag. Goodness. Well, then why do you worship? Well, because this is the greatest country on earth, and right, so on and so forth. And we kind of see that with the statues that are being taken down right now because Christopher Columbus, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. I'm not sure if a statue was actually taken down of him or not.
No, I'm pretty sure it had paint dumped on it.
That was what?
Paint dumped on it. It was not torn down.
Okay. The George Washington statue had a flag wrapped around his head and set on fire, and then it was also put down, right? So that one was pretty rough.
Yeah.
The Christopher Columbus one, at least one of those came down. And I don't want to get, I don't want to get too far into what each of these characters did to deserve some hate. Because, I mean, George Washington did own slaves. All right.
Every one of our founding fathers owned other human beings as chattel slavery.
Yeah. Thomas Jefferson.
Period. All of them. So.
Yeah. Thomas Jefferson, if I remember right, he owned over 600 slaves, and he was also vehemently against slavery, but he didn't give up his own slaves. So they say, right? It's definitely debatable, but that's part of the reason why I don't want to get into it, because that's not the main point here. The main point is, no matter what this is, no matter what statue it is, I don't care about the statues. I think it's fine if they come down. And there's always two sides of a coin, right? At least more than one story, especially when it comes to Christopher Columbus, right? How many stories do we have about him? How great he is. That man was a fucking monster, just a fucking monster.
I agree.
But should we vandalize them and pull them down? I understand why people would want them down, because at least Christopher Columbus was a monster. George Washington, I don't know a ton about him. He fought in some wars. He had to have some wooden teeth at some point in his life for some reason. feel like that's enough to have a statue.
Nothing is black and white, like
Nothing's
you
black
always
and white.
say. Nothing is black and white. And
Grace.
George Washington did start this country. However, he did own slaves. Like I said, every single one of our founding fathers owned slaves. Abraham Lincoln, the man who's set them free. This is a quote from him. Quote, "You and we are different races. We have between us a broader difference than exists between almost any other two races. Whether it is right or wrong, I need not discuss, but this physical difference is a great disadvantage to us both, as I think your race suffers very greatly, many of them by living among us, while ours suffers from your presence. In a word, we suffer on each side. If this is admitted, it affords a reason at least why we should be separated." Abraham Lincoln. So, I mean, this is Lincoln, April 16th, 1862. During the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln signs a bill that ends slavery in D.C. and authorizes paying reparations to slave owners. Whites are paid more than $1 million for property lost. So, you know, there's a lot of information if anybody's seeking it to find it. You know, there's a lot of heavy information that goes right along with each one of these statues. And if it is a Confederate statue, look up its history, because it wasn't put up during the Civil War or after the Civil War. Many of them started going up 86 and 87 years after the end of the Civil War.
Which would put it at what, the 40s?
The starting in early 1911, groups of people started petitioning for these statues. You got to also understand that this is during Jim Crow. This is during lynchings. This is during, I mean, if you realized where all of these monuments went up and what years they did, I don't know how well. Let's see if I can get this in there. Do you see all of the dots on that map? I hope that all of you can. Okay, those are where monuments, there's 1,503 Confederate monuments and counting, 109 public schools named for Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, or other Confederate icons, 80 counties and cities named for Confederates, 9 official Confederate holidays in 6 states, and 10 U.S. military bases named for Confederates. The role, I mean, the Confederate statues were put up during a time where in 1900, race riots in New Orleans and New York City were going on. 1901, 105 blacks lynched. 1902, 85 blacks lynched. 1903, 84 black lynched. 1905, 57 blacks lynched. 1906, 62 blacks lynched. 1908, 89 black lynched. 1910, 67 black humans were lynched. So during this particular time is when commissions were being put together for Confederate statues. So if you want to know where I personally stand on getting rid of or keeping Confederate statues, is this. And I've thought about it hard, really, really hard. I want them to all be taken down from publicly funded, tax-funded places, all of them. And I would like to see a museum go up. I would like to see a museum going up in the South, where I showed you that map, where the majority of them are, like smack dab in the middle, and give an incentive for schools to go there for field trips. And I want all of these statues there with their truthful history. Follow the money. We say that a lot in journalism. No different for these statues. You follow the money and you'll follow it back to people who are descendants of the losers of the Civil War. Many family members were taught that their fathers, grandfathers, great uncles, great great grandfathers, that they were fighting for Virginia. They were fighting for Florida. They were fighting for North Carolina. They were fighting for Tennessee. None of them were taught they were fighting to keep slavery. So there's a lot going on during this time. And you know, I do have to say that it correlates with when people spoke of Orlando as the largest mass terrorist attack shooting in the US history. I remember that news, and it was sad. I mean, I'm with a woman. It touches home. It was a Muslim man who was struggling with his own sexuality, went into a gay nightclub and shot everybody. But it isn't the largest mass terrorist attack in the US history. What we're taught about our history in this country is shenanigans. We are not taught. The Civil War might have been lost by the South, but they won the narrative. 100% won the narrative. The East St. Louis massacre of 1917, more than 250 dead. The Arkansas massacre 1919, more than 200 dead. The Tulsa massacre 1921, where they annihilated 22 city blocks, Black Wall Street, Black businesses.
They destroyed the city. We don't talk about
more than 300 dead, more than 10,000 injured, and more than 10 million people homeless. But we don't talk about that. So if you want to know where I stand on those statues,
first time I heard about that was this year.
Right. Do you see? And that's not, you're not the only one.
And I'm not a dummy when
it's not taught in school. It's not taught in college. It's not taught in graduate school. Where it is taught is if you actually go take Black history in college. If you decide, like I did, I want to know, yes, that I want to know as much as I can so I can come from an educated place to create an opinion on something as, you know, as serious as racism is in America is. And, you know, Black Wall Street, it was a historical account, in a historical, monumental, beautiful place that was proof that Lincoln emancipated. There was all of this policy-wise done so that we could have Black leaders, Black governors, Black mayors, Black school superintendents, all the way down. And many locations in the South ended up being completely full of Black humans in leadership. It was wonderful. But then they started getting wealthy on top of being leaders. And when the president called out the National Guard to make sure that segregation was, you know, the National Guard was sent out to make sure that segregation and that Reformation and that all of these things could happen. They were happening. And when that National Guard was called back, Oklahoma in 1921 was the Black Wall Street was demolished by mobs, by white racist mobs. I think, you know, that they were jealous. They were jealous of the prosperity. They were jealous of the Black community known as Wall Street. They were Black-owned businesses that were wealthy enough that they could hand that wealth down. The same thing that other families like the Ford family, you know, all these other wealthy families could do, and it just could not stand. So when the Guard was called out, mobs took over, and within you know, that night it went from Black leadership from top down to no Blacks anywhere. They demolished the entire place and took over. So this was the same time, though. This stuff is going on when these monuments were going up. So yeah. I think that they should be in a museum. I don't think that we should demolish them. I don't think they should be set on fire or desecrated. I think that they should be carefully removed.
Because they're still a part of history.
Yes,
even
they are.
just making them and having the balls to put them up is part of our history.
Right? And have all of their history next to it. That not only who the statue is of, what they did in the Civil War, everything, but then also what year it went up, why it went up so many years after, and what was going on in the country, and who profited by putting these up. I think that that's very important, and I would support a museum and want to actually go and pay homage to it. We do not look at Germany and see any kind of monuments to any SS leaders. However, you can walk around Germany and there are placards, or placards, I guess, depending on where you're from, what they're called, stating this house is where, so and so hid in the attic. This house is where SS. I mean, it has all the history because they took their history, they acknowledged it, they realized how shitty and fucked up it was, but they acknowledged it. And they realized if we acknowledge it honestly, we can put things in place that honor the history that our country went through by not honoring the evil. And we can also learn from it. And I think that as far as Americans go, en masse, the whole country, we have a long ways to go. Because as you titled this, idol worship, that's 100% what it is. It's funny. Christians aren't supposed to do that, are they? Have any type of idol worship besides the little white baby Jesus?
Hold on, don't ask that.
The dead one on the cross.
I have more to build on before we get there.
Yeah, go for it.
Also, I need to piggyback because I didn't plan on taking that.
You're heavy. Get off my back.
Rabbit. You carrying that? No. I do want to point out though, just like specifically with what you shared about Tulsa. This is the systemic racism that we talk about. It's the things that we ignore more than the things that we see. It's more than the identity politics, right? There's been a number of Black people who say things like, cool, yeah, you're pulling down these statues, but if it stops here at the statues, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that's not what we don't need to tear down statues for Black Lives Matter right now. We need real change. We need to feel like Black lives and Black history and Black issues matter, right? Housing, jobs, again, history. We need to teach proper history, not just Black history. It's part of American history. And we need to stop acting like it's not. Because when we don't understand what their issues are, we can't help them because no one gives a shit. And why would anyone give a shit about a Black person's or the Black community's problems? Like, really, why would anyone care if no one fucking knows about their issues? We don't teach history right. We don't teach critical thinking in school. We don't.
And we teach a narrative.
Yeah, we teach a narrative. And so when you get into politics as an adult,
Black American history is American history. Black history is American history. You'll be better off learning it.
Right. This is just like the other things that we talked about here on our channel, like all of the war crimes that America commit. Right? This is the same thing. We're not taught important things. There are no voices of dissent that are raised up. That's the issue.
You'll never see Noam Chomsky on CNN.
Yeah, no, you don't.
He lost that right when he was critical of the Iraq War. He lost that right when he was critical of the Vietnam War. He
Right.
lost that right when he was critical of us bombing Laos and telling the American citizens that we weren't bombing Laos.
Right.
Like,
But if you ever flip the narrative on us back and you say, look at 9/11, look at Al Qaeda, and look at what they did to us. What do we think about Al Qaeda? Well, we think they're monsters and we want to kill them. So if we kill anyone in a different country, and they look at us like death to America, like Fox News is always repeating that they say, well, of course they say that because America's the monsters. It doesn't matter who started it. When you murder people, you look like the bad guy. You're the murderer. It's just how it works. It's not terrorist sympathy. That's just fucking common sense. And
I can use an example to make people understand what you just said very easily. Let's say the U.S. military industrial complex gets intel that there is a terrorist. Now, everything that they have shows that this is the guy. They apprehend him. They don't kill him. They take him to a black ops site and realize that they have the right guy. And his list of atrocities are endless. He's a very bad dude. He just is. He wants to take down the American government. And if American citizens go with it, he could care less. He's a bad, bad guy. He is what Fox News warns and scares everybody about as the Muslim terrorist. So let's just use this example. He's caught. Now, he's behind bars. If we were to now torture him endlessly, cut him, have dogs bite him, do all of those things, now we are as bad as him. We have to be better. If we were to kill him for doing all of those things, we are now a murderer. I feel like killing the killers is never, I am anti-death penalty. I know Mac and I differ a little bit on that, but even for the most the most horrible terrorist, what right-wing news media warns and scares Americans about. Even if we were to go in guns blazing, we found out where he was and we confirmed it and killed everybody there, I don't feel like we did justice. I feel like that would be being the bad guy as well. And you don't have to be the bad guy to beat the bad guy. You don't fight fire with fire, as the saying goes. I don't believe in eye for an eye either.
Right. And just to kind of show where our differences lie, just a little bit, and I'll use a superhero analogy. I'm wearing a Superman shirt and a Flash. Flashbacks. So where I am with the death penalty is Batman doesn't kill anyone, right? But I am also a utilitarian by some means. So I think Batman should kill the Joker. And if not, I think Arkham should put him down. All right. That doesn't mean to kill all of his henchmen.
Right.
Like a lot of them are just in a really bad city and they're living in poverty and they just, they have problems if they want to deal with any of that, but they're also terrified, right? I don't need to get into it. Point is, we don't need to go bomb another country, right? But
yeah, the point. I love that you use that because right as you were saying that, I'm my mind's going at like, right, there's poverty, there's all these reasons, so we could even use that for the baddest terrorist. This guy who is 27 years old, let's say, grew up where another country has been droning and terrorizing his country since the day he was born, took out his relatives. He's only in his mind fighting for his country. Now he's deluded and he's wrong and he's going about it wrong. I just think that as humanists, we need to take a step back and try to remedy the reasons why people become that, so that we don't have crazy people in leadership that think we need to become that too in order to win.
Right. No, yeah, there's always nuance, right?
Yes, always.
No one should be the jury, judge, and executioner.
Except for the Punisher.
Except for the Punisher? Yeah, I guess he gets it. That's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
But like we have international courts, we have all that. But I'm going to drop this back now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Back to where we started. Back to the statues. Back to the statues. The point is, why we went on that rabbit trail is because history matters, nuance matters. And our next topic is going to be similar because there are different ways to look at defund the police, right? Not there yet, but the statues. Again, so instead of trying to get into each and every one, I want to make the point and counterpoint of what we should do with the statues. Should we pull them down? I think yes and no. Because one, I understand why people want to. And in a sense, people have a right to, because the people have the right to protest, and they're just fucking statues, right? They're just fucking statues. Counterpoint, yes, they are just statues, but they are public property. And a lot of these protesters, not all of them by any means, a lot of them want to be violent, right? We've gone over that, but a lot of them don't come from the area where these statues are at. If there's a town or a city in Louisiana that just wants to be Rebel County, South the Rise Again town, like, I'm for it. I don't want that in my country, but I don't live in the whole fucking country, right? If you want to be the most racist town in America, woohoo, buckaroo, go for it. We'll all stay away the best we can. Like, obviously, we are part of the United States. There are certain rules they have to follow if you want to be part of the United States. But democracy. I really believe in democracy. I really believe in free speech. Let them keep their General Lee statues and whatever they want. If those locals want it, right? If they do not want it, they should be removed, right? And they should be put in a museum or whatever they really choose. Like, if it's local public property, local public should figure it out. If it's federal property, the the larger population should figure it out. There's better ways to do it. But counter. This is the really important one. It is 73%, I think, roundabout, want Medicare for all. 73, I think, percent of the population wants Medicare for all. That's like 63% of Republicans and 90-some percent of Democrats. 70-some% of the population wants Medicare for all. They want free at the point of service healthcare. Just, yes, charge me more on taxes. I don't want to keep paying this monthly rate. It's killing me. I can't afford it. This is immoral. This is fucking stupid. Most people want that. We don't have it. We can't tear down a statue and get it. There have been petitions to remove statues. President Trump recently said that he will not even consider changing the names of, I can't remember the fort names, of certain military bases like Pike and I really can't remember.
Fort Bragg. He is a horrible person. Look up Fort Bragg on your own time, people, and let me know if you think our military should be spending any time that looks up to someone like him.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So thank you for filling that in. We want these changes, and then our officials don't give us these changes. So the counterpoint is government doesn't fucking listen to you. It's written in our constitution to burn it to the fucking ground. Like the whole government, not just the statues. Tucker Carlson, sorry. Yeah, the whole fucking country. If the country doesn't listen, if your representatives don't listen, it makes sense.
Revolution is written into our founding documents. Yeah. It really is. It is. It's step by step how to do it in our founding documents. And remember when you said that would make it in the 40s when I was talking about?
Yes. Yeah, you said like 50 years.
1948, the rebel flag, the battle flag, the Confederate flag has many different names. In 1948, that flag makes a comeback for the first time since the Civil War. 1948. So in this lifetime right now, South Carolina politician Strom Thurmond, I'm sure you guys heard that name, ran for president under the newly founded States' Rights Democratic Party, also known as the Dixiecrats. The party's purpose was clear: to separate from the other Democrats and, quote, "We stand for segregation of the races," said Article 4 of its platform.
Say that last part again.
What's that flag stand for again? States' rights.
Say that last part again.
Heritage. We stand for segregation of the races. 1948, Strom Thurmond, presidential candidate. First time that flag came back since it was. That's like if people started wearing Hitler's armbands in Germany. Like, what? Why is that showing up here?
We just want Jews out of the bank.
I agree with the freedom of speech and them being able to do it, but I would just like an educated populace, similar to Germany's. I know Germany has laws that you're not allowed to even show the swastika, that I don't actually agree with. I think that we should have education. We have, an educated electorate that sees this battle flag as treason, and putting statues up of the people who supported the segregation of races as wrong. And when a monument goes up, what's its purpose? We look up to it. We're in awe of it. We celebrate it. That's why we made it that. That's, I think, where you and I and most of our friends have a problem with it. We don't look up to it. We don't celebrate it. It shouldn't be celebrated. It should be denounced. Immoral.
Should be. And this was a Tucker Carlson's point. I've been watching a lot of Fox News recently. He says they're pulling down our heroes because they know if they can get away with pulling down your heroes, they can make you do anything. They can make you believe anything you want. It just becomes a slippery fucking slope, which he argues is a slippery slope, but his argument is the slippery slope. It's disturbing because people believe that, but also when we don't. Black Lives Matter is a movement. It's also an organization, right? Unlike Antifa.
Yeah, Antifa is not an organization.
No,
it's any human.
But it's a terrorist organization.
Anti-fascist and claims to be anti-fascist. Well, Antifa is just short for anti-fascist, and I am 100% anti-fascist.
I was astounded last week when I found out my parents didn't know what Antifa meant.
Most don't. Yeah. So
anyways.
No, it doesn't. It is heartbreaking. I found out that my mom didn't know what Jim Crow was or meant about 2-3 years ago, and I was just astounded.
I learned
I just
sooner
couldn't
than that.
believe, but you got to understand that in this nation, there is a narrative taught, not truthful history. You know, we're taught that the Civil War had good guys on both sides. You know, it was a misunderstanding. And I do want to say that in 1951, and this is a quote, the Confederate flag is coming to mean something. 1951, by the way, is coming to mean something to everybody now. It means the Southern cause. It means the heart throbs of the people of the South. It is becoming to be the symbol of the white race and the cause of the white people. The Confederate flag means segregation. Roy Harris, editor, Augusta Courier, 1951. These are the people, him included, who are involved in making sure monuments go up in public areas, particularly public schools. So imagine being a young, promising Black man who is excited in science and medicine, but you have to walk by a celebrated slave owner who repeatedly beat and raped his slaves as you walk into school. To me, that means know your place, N-word. I don't know how else to look at it. And I can't even, I try to put myself in the shoes of a young, promising Black person whose first day of college has to walk by this celebrated person, and why we accept that as a society is good to me, seeing that we don't. I really do have to say, it might seem like chaotic and horrible to a lot of the older Americans, but it makes me have so much hope seeing so many people saying similar things to Mac and I about, well, we don't need to destroy them. They need to go to tell the real story of history. They need to be in a museum about the struggle of race that we've had. Everything from the beginning through the civil rights, Jim Crow, everything needs to be in there.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if we can fix our political system without fixing our educational system. And I'm not sure if we can fix our educational system without fixing our political system.
Well,
it's really a catch-22.
Think about education. Here's another quote, 1954. Yeah. So even closer to our time. May 17th, 1954. Quote, separate but equal is rooted in the deep desire to keep the people who were formerly slaves as near to that state as is possible, end quote. That's from Congress. Okay, Betsy DeVos, U.S. Secretary of Education. She has no educational degree, no teaching experience, no experience working in a school environment. She's an advocate for funneling money out of public education into for-profit Christian-based education. School choice, that's all her. February 2017. School choice is
just like workers what against the union? Workers' choice, workers' rights.
Right, the right to work states.
Right to work. Yeah. That's a real good name. It's real shitty when you look at it.
It's very shitty. It's the right for the owners of said business to make you work how they want you to work. You have no representation. And it's if anybody has any questions on how that feels, ask Brantley, Vibrantly Brantley, who is in our chat, who works in a state where not only, I mean, when he first told me that he didn't even get like regular an hour lunch break, worked 12 hours, I thought he couldn't be right. So I looked up his state and the laws, and I had to let him know, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that the older generation, while this was becoming law, weren't doing anything for you, because now we have to start from Instead of creating laws for the workers, we have to dismantle laws that are against workers first. So, like I said, the education. Now we went from 54 to 2017, so just a couple years ago. HBUCs are pioneers of school choice. This is what Betsy DeVos says about historically Black universities and colleges. They're the pioneers of school choice, she says. HBUCs are living proof that when more options are provided to students, they are afforded greater access and greater quality. Think about that. HBCUs were built because that was the only place the Black people could go. It wasn't a choice. It was if they wanted to go to college, they had to build it themselves. Now the president is suggesting that federal funding of HBUCs may be unconstitutional because the funding is based on race. Like, we don't have a truthful history problem. It's way beyond that. We have a narrative problem. That whole thing about the winners write the history, it couldn't be more true. And, George Orwell's 1984.
That's a good book.
I know it's just a book. I know it is, but it also
I didn't say
states
it's just a book. I said it's a good book. It's a bad reality.
It should be. We should replace the Bible with it, literally, and try to learn as much as we can, because those who control the history that we learn control the future that we live. It's in 1984, and
we're in 1984.
Right.
We've always been at war with East Asia. What are you talking about?
Yes.
All right. I want to really try to wrap this up here in the next 10 minutes. That way we can get to the main topic and still have words for it.
He's a good one, yes.
So to recap, again, every time I come back, I want to try to recap. Statues. I don't care about the statues. I do care about the rights of public property, and I do care about the rights of people when their representatives don't fucking listen to them. So you have to take matters into your own hands, because that's just what has to happen. It logically follows, as well. It just follows with the Constitution. It just makes sense. Like, this is what you get when you don't teach proper history, when you lie about things, right? When you lie by omission. These are the kind of reactions that you get. You just always will. You can say it's right or it's wrong. Doesn't matter if it's wrong, honestly. It doesn't matter if we get like more Black people in the streets with guns killing people, because what has happened up to this point logically calls for it. Doesn't make it right, but what we have in our history calls for violence. I do not condone it. I do not want it. It logically follows. I don't have to like it. I don't have to. We just have to admit to ourselves, if we let things go, we condone what happens when you just let things go. It's like anything else in life, right? So, that being said,
I think I want to end that with a quote from MLK.
Cool. And then I have another tiny thing to add to this topic. Go ahead.
In 1955, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and I quote, "We want to love our enemies. Be good to them. This is what we must live by. We must meet hate with love. We must love our white brothers no matter what they do to us." 1955. This next part was what was found after he was killed. He was writing it, so it wasn't finished. "Urban riots are a special form of violence. They are not insurrections. The rioters are not seeking to seize territory or attain control of institutions. They are mainly intended to shock the white community, to get attention, but most of all, alienated from society and knowing society cherishes property above people. They are shocking it by abusing property rights." MLK Jr., 1967.
Yes.
And it was titled Why America May Go to Hell, scheduled to be delivered by MLK April 7th, 1968, but he had already been killed.
It's neat,
So I
though.
think that that's very, very like right on what's happening right now. Yeah.
I want to really make note, because I like to play devil's advocate a little bit, and I also like to try to give different perspectives, even the ones I don't agree with. And I'm not covering all of them. There's just a few that I like to throw out there, right? There's tons. Like, I'm not a Republican. You're not going to get a lot of Republican viewpoints at me, or fascist ones, right?
Thank
But
goodness.
MLK is one of my favorite historical figures of all time.
Of all time. Same here.
All the way back in time.
Same here.
Malcolm X, I don't know a lot about him. Had a very, very different solution.
You should dive in, because you'd be surprised.
Say what?
You should dive in. Just I can definitely send you where to start.
Yeah. I've started a little bit, but it's been a while, so I'm rusty on it. But I know
you got to, as atheists, take, because MLK is more of liberation theology. Everyone, atheists, Muslims, everyone, let's all make this world better.
Very humanist.
Malcolm X is not. He is Black Muslim, and he thinks it's high time that someone says, let's put us first. And you learn as much as you can about him, because there is a debate of MLK and Malcolm X debating. It's wonderful. Watch it, everyone.
I want to. So my point, with the little bit I know about him, you can think he had the wrong idea.
Yeah.
But he had an idea that the universe brought him to. The life that he lived, the way he sees the world, logically followed to what he became. And he became a movement for that, right? It wasn't just one man who thought that. There was a movement behind him, like MLK.
Right.
These things logically follow. Things happen. Cause and effect. Okay. Anyways, I wanted to add on to this a little more. I was going to blend it in a little more, but I hadn't quite. We did rabbit trails, and they were good. So, first they came, quotations. First they came for the generals on the rebel side, on the south side. First they came for those statues. Then they were all like, and then people were worried that, well, next they're going to come for just like, more people than just the generals. Then they came for like slave owners, and then presidents. Like, people are starting to freak out that, like, if we keep pulling down these statues, it's just going to be all hate for all white people, and it's going to become a Black Power nation, right? And then someone had said like a week ago, like, who are they going to come after next? First they said the presidents, and then they said Jesus Christ, and then now they're coming after Jesus Christ, and they really are. Sean King, who was...
I like Sean King. I want to caveat this. I follow Sean King. I get down with Sean King, and I liked all of his tweets. But I'm also an atheist who think a white baby Jesus with blue eyes is fucking ridiculous. So that's my opinion on that.
It is ridiculous. So there's a lot to look at here, and I'm going to try to make it short because we have another topic, and I have to.
No, this is actually good though.
Hours. Yeah. So, and I wanted to say this one separately. I needed to say this one separately. So, Sean King said the next thing that we need to focus on is white depictions of Jesus, right? Because there is systemic racism in there, as in Jesus wasn't a white dude, right? You look at where he's from. He was Middle Eastern. Even the Bible said that he had burnished bronze feet, right? Which would be about that skin tone, about that time. And I'm not convinced that
He
was
would
an
look
actual,
like a Palestinian, since
would look
that's
like a
where he was
Palestinian.
born.
Right, and he would
Beautiful.
have dark hair. It would be wavy curly. He just
Those
would
big,
not
beautiful
be,
brown eyes. Yes.
he's not the
I'm
Michael.
sorry, but Palestinian children are like among the most beautiful children on this planet. So imagine,
Kids are
why
cute.
did they have to make him not so beautiful?
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard multiple things about Michelangelo's like Jesus, like the way that he depicted him. I've heard that it was his uncle. I've also heard that it was actually his gay lover that he painted.
Absolutely. Look into that.
that was
It's
it?
fascinating.
Okay. I tried to like double check on that. But yeah, I thought that was the thing. But I couldn't find it today. Also, I was very busy. So yeah, fun fact, most of the time when you look at Jesus, you're looking at Michelangelo's gay lover. It's literally gay white Jesus. Fun fact. So
I mean, he did have some abs.
he did. So
Listen.
hold thy rod and thy. Okay. Anyways.
Woo, Jesus. Making me hot.
That said, that's why it's kind of ridiculous. But why? Why is he depicted as white? Right? And this goes all the way back to Constantine. Back in like 11 or the 12th century, when the Catholic, when he took on Catholicism, when he took on Christianity, Constantine did, and that was in Rome, and that was a European nation, and they're white. From then on, you get these white depictions of Jesus Christ, and it's not said in the Bible very specifically that he's Middle Eastern, but they definitely give you the area. They definitely give you the burnished bronze skin. They definitely give you a couple hints that he might not just be a white guy, but it's important that he's a white guy, especially when you get to slavery in the USA, when they really started to push that, oh, well, he was definitely white because white's the superior.
There is a book that was published.
Forget what it's called.
Its sole purpose was how to use the Bible and Christianity to control your slaves. It was, I mean, it says in the Bible, slaves obey your master. I mean, it's so gross. So I mean, I understand. I get it. I get why having the truth is more important than your feelings. And a lot of people's feelings that the Jesus they've looked at of the church that they were married in, that they grew up in, and you coming to take it is far too far for them. I get it. But at the same time, if where they're trying to go, their future is based on false history.
Right. And though it doesn't change the character of Jesus Christ in the Bible.
Character.
Right. Like this. Like it's still a little bit like Christopher Columbus, right? We learn like he's just this grand explorer and he finds the United States, and it's just a wonderful, nice story about this adventure. Who wanted to prove the world's not flat, and he wanted to find a better trade route, like whatever, to India. And then
he specifically looked for stole 9 to 12-year-old girls. Specifically, many of his trips were to steal 9 to 12-year-old girls for sex slaves. So if you're a parent, tell me you want to look up at that statue.
Right. And then let's not even mention about what he's, like what he did to the Native Americans. Right. And what more of our founding fathers did. But when you whitewash history like that, and whitewash history,
It's a perfect description.
It's a really sad one. You have a hard time seeing, again, as Tucker Carlson says, these heroes. We look at them as heroes because we aren't taught history properly. We aren't taught that Jesus wasn't white. And then it's hard to change it. People act like we're trying to change history when someone's already fucking changed history.
Right.
And then they cry about it. And just like, no, we just want like to look at the world like with like a realistic like lens here. I'm like,
we
I'm
would
sorry
just like the historical sources we have.
And
Yeah, we would like the historical sources we have to show truth of what things are. That's all. That's all.
Right. We just want
they don't understand it.
And
they have to play the victim.
We always do. And we are taught like this. Every country is taught like this, that we have the best country, we have the best culture, we have the best religion, we have the best everything. We always have to feel like we have the best of whatever we fucking have. And if you just look at history, the human race doesn't have a good history.
No.
We have many good things in our history. We have many beautiful qualities. Yes. And we can capitalize on those. And it's better to capitalize on those and not whitewash all the other stuff. We need to accept all the bad for what it is actually, and by accepting, that means recognize it.
Yes.
Make statues of Confederate soldiers, put them up in the public to remind us of the shitty things we've done. Have museums of Nazi memorabilia. Like, this stuff shouldn't be burned. It's a part of our history.
Be educational, yes.
It is. It should be educational. We need this stuff. And to ignore it is to whitewash it. That's what happens. We try to ignore it, and then we sugarcoat it after that. And then it's just not the same history. And then when we're taught the wrong thing from childhood to adulthood, it's hard for our adult minds to go back and be like, I was wrong about this. I was wrong about that. Like, no one likes to admit they're wrong, especially.
And without critical thinking,
your world is wrong.
That what you believe is wrong without critical thinking feels like you are being personally attacked at who you are, what makes you you. That's a big problem. That's a big problem all over the world, but especially in today's contemporary politics. People feel like they're being attacked personally, and it's not. It's that the wrong information is what they believe to be factual.
Right.
And like I said, the South didn't win the war, but they won the narrative.
They did. So as far as idol worship goes, that's that. And I want to end it with, as far as the religious side goes of it, it's in the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
You're not supposed to make idols or worship idols of
anything.
Make or worship of any other gods, also your God.
Right.
Or Jesus or the Virgin Mary, any of it. No depictions.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't match the beauty of that is the Lord, right? You can't. So you're breaking one of the big ass laws, right? The 10 Commandments, to even make a white Jesus or a non-white Jesus. You're not supposed to worship the cross. That's the pagan people anyway.
Yeah, and then to idolize Confederate soldiers, that's even worse.
It's
like,
awesome.
Get out of here with your Bible rules. Either follow them or don't.
Confederate things are worse than that. Yes, I think.
Right.
But
goodness.
I need to just throw that tidbit in there. Like if changing the color of white Jesus' skin offends you and you are religious, then think about, you shouldn't have that idol anyways.
Right.
You should never worship it. You should never copy it. You should never do anything with it as far as your religion goes.
Right. Yeah, but what if an Asian person says, but we want our Jesus to look like us? And a black pastor, black church says, we want our Jesus to look like us. If if every human, there's so many ways a human can look. If all the ways humans look wanted their own Jesus, I say, well, it's all like Lord of the Rings. You can have your own Lord of the Rings too. So, I mean, whatever you need. Just know that changing a white baby that's not per your Bible supposed to be, idolized into anything else, puts fire under your ass. Maybe you should read your Bible. And if you're not religious and you have a problem with it because you're racist, well, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. That's just stupid.
Before I forget, before we move on, because we need to move on. I didn't specifically give my take on the white Jesus idols being torn down and such. That's private property.
Yes.
So I feel like shame's a really good way to get that down, but we shouldn't vandalize. The more vandalism we do, the closer we get to more violent revolution, and I don't want that. I don't. Right. I know some people do. So if that's what you want, you should definitely do that. But I don't want that.
Right, but I actually have stats on that, Mac. It's not the left. When polled, it is far-right militias who want a civil war.
Mm-hmm. I believe it. And I'm sure there's some on the left. I'm absolutely sure. Yeah, but
the numbers were I think that the ones that they had on the left was like 2%, and it was, I don't even think if they're on the left. I think that they just agree with a lot of like freedoms, so they call themselves on the left. But I don't think that you are if you want a violent revolution.
Right. All right. No justice, no peace. And right. I get the fear tactic and the occupying tactic. That works really well. Pulling down statues, they're just statues. So if you're going to do that, don't stop there. Go for actual policy changes.
Policy changes first. Yes.
And just don't worship idols, right?
Don't worship idols unless it's Mac and I.
Yeah, like we're great.
Yeah.
But
yes.
If you're gonna worship or look up to anything, I don't care if you love Christopher Columbus and you think he's the best thing ever, as long as you can tell me the dirty things he's done.
Acknowledge,
all of him. Like if you think Hitler was the neatest freaking person on the planet, I think you're a freak. But as long as you can tell me all the awful things he's done, I'm like, all right, you're probably an awful person too, but at least you're logically consistent and you're not ignoring shit. Right. I don't care as much. So be logically consistent, be honest, and like, I don't know, try and be kind. All right, I'm done with idol worship.
Kindness matters.
Kindness does matter. Be kind, rewind.
That might be that might be, we might have some Zoomers that are like, what did you just say?
Yes. All right, let's get through this idol. We're done with idol worship, so let's move on. Let's move on, Christy. You have the floor, and I'm going to
defund the popo. Yeah, the popo.
I'm so excited for this. I was excited for this last week. I wanted to go in like another 2 hours, and I'm just like, I can't do it.
Yes. Okay.
If we can try to be done by 12:30, Christy.
I think so.
It'd be wonderful.
I think so. I didn't count how many pages, but it's not that big. All right. Defund the police. I have watched CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. I wanted to know what they were saying. I specifically looked up Defund the Police and that channel so I could apparently have like a what? I have to cover this? They're not even, that's not what it is. So unfortunately, again, we are a country of narrative, not facts. And I did not get facts from, I might have got some from CNN and some from MSNBC, and maybe even one or two from Fox. But the narrative was just false. That is not it at all. City, county, and or state budgets or national budgets is where we're going to start. They're all markers of what a society prioritizes. So think of a pie chart. You know, you have a city or a county, a state, national. Each one of these divisions has a pie chart of priorities. The US spends a minimum of $100 billion every single year on policing. So out of that pie chart, it's a big chunk for policing. Most of this funding comes from local municipalities. So that's crazy. Your local tax-paying dollars are feeding the pie, the budget pie, and you're not really getting a say in what parts get what.
Did you say pie?
Pie.
Pie. You got my attention again, Christy. Sorry.
I do like pie. Pie is good. All right. The easiest example for me to find and use to show you guys is like a city's budget. So we'll start with New York. Police, out of that pie, get $5.9 billion per year. Homeless services, $2.1 billion per year. Health, $1.9 billion per year. Housing, $1.3 billion per year. Youth and community development, all smushed in together, gets $988 million per year. Jobs programs gets $382 million per year. So you can see the massive disparages between $5.9 billion for policing and health services, 1.9. Like, oh my goodness. Chicago's, I'm from Illinois, so I found this pretty fascinating and grossly wrong. We're doing it wrong. Police per year, 1.7 billion. Fire department, 638 million. What? Like what? Transportation. Now, Chicago has some, I live in Tampa now, and the public transportation is just horrendous here. It runs on the weekends every hour, and if you're trying to catch a connecting bus to go this way, one of them's late, you're already like 3 hours late for what you need to do. So, but I know in Chicago they have pretty decent public transportation. They get 183 million per year. That's it. I don't know what Tampa gets. I'm going to be looking into it after I did this story, because if all they're using is 183 million and they can do it way better than Tampa, I'm going to have to call some senators and stuff. Libraries. Chicago is known for one of the best libraries in the country. 72 million a year. Healthcare, health, and the whole city of Chicago. Now remember, police get 1.7 billion per year. Health gets 55 million. Just like 1% of that. Seems to me that we, as a society, are over policing. Our budget and actions show to all citizens that we value punishment over dealing with, on a personal level, our citizens' issues and trying to help remedy these problems and issues. In the long run, we'd rather punish people in the short term, which does shit to fix anything. US police arrest a minimum of 10 million people per year. 80% of those arrests are for minor offenses like drinking in public, taking a piss in public, drugs, etc. Basic non-violent issues. And to caveat that particular thing, most of these arrests are in Black and brown areas. So we do have, disparaging numbers there as well. It seems like over policing to me, since the rate of arrests for violent crimes is 5%. 5% of the 10 million people arrested each year are for violent crimes. And that's according to the Vera Institute of Justice, January 2019. That is pretty new data. We can look directly at this by looking at our schools. 1.7 million students here in this country are at schools with police officers, but not one counselor. 3 million of our United States citizens that are students in either elementary, middle, or high school have police at their schools, but not one nurse. That's 3 million students. So no wonder why everything looks like a nail when all we have is hammers everywhere. There's also the fact that 1 in every 4 cop shootings, the person that gets shot is suffering from mental health issues. 1 in 4, that's 25%. That's massive. So it seems to me also that police are doing the jobs of what other, much more qualified people should be doing. Creating more jobs is what we should be doing. Isn't that what every Republican, conservative, or corporate Democrat brags about? Creating jobs. We could be creating jobs and reallocating this funding from the police, these massive, almost $2 billion a year funding of that budget pie per city, to more qualified workers, causing better results and less shootings, less deaths. I think that's important. We have many cops, actually, I found doing this, that agree with what I'm saying. They also understand that their job, what they signed up for, was to serve and protect. And I'm not saying that there is not a thin blue line culture in policing. Obviously, this last month, if nothing else, has shown us that cops are more afraid to go against the narrative and stand up for a citizen than they're more afraid of their fellow, police officers. They'd rather stick with them than stick up for a citizen. We've seen that, but that's not all. That's a big majority, and that sucks, but that's not all. Many cops that are agreeing with what I'm saying, they don't want to play like mental health care practitioner. That's not something they signed up for. That's not something they went to school for or are qualified to do. They're also not drug addiction professionals or counselors, and they did not sign up for that. And many cities do not have health practitioners that are on the books paid for by public funding as cops are. So there's one number to call, 911. That's who deals with it. We also have peaceful protests all the time in this country. That's part of America's legacy. Hands up, go for it, Mac.
So I have a friend who works or has worked, no longer works, for a newspaper.
Good job.
And their newspaper had cuts because it was kind of a local newspaper.
Yeah.
They had some budget cuts, so they had to cut some positions, right? You cut some positions and you have to consolidate the work. So my friend got basically the work of 2 people, then 3, and then like 3.5. And what happens when you get more and more jobs? You do each job less proficiently, right? This is not really the fault of police officers. They really are some kind of victim here.
It's systematic.
It is definitely systematic, and we let it be systematic because as a culture, as a society, a large society, we are not as
Law and order.
politically engaged, right, as we really should be for it to help, not hinder us.
No, that's exactly it. We're not politically engaged.
No, we're not. And I want to show some sympathy here for the officers because this is their livelihood, right? And you shouldn't be worried about like the pay to do a public service, but also their jobs are consolidated. Like they have so many other jobs. Like they do have to deal with mental health, and they do have to deal like with going to every fire, right? And everything. Like the cops are used for freaking everything. They're just the bitch boys of every local society. And that doesn't mean that they need to get a pass because they have all this stress on them. This means that we need to fix a fucking problem, is what it means.
Right.
And I still have sympathy, even for those who break, but you know this as you go through school to be a police officer, or you go through the police academy. Like, you know, you will be under stress, right? You know, soon after you get there that you aren't trained to deal with a lot of the stuff you have to deal with. And you can think being a cop is the greatest thing in the world. This is going to sound repetitive because I said this earlier. But you need to be able to kind of point out all the bad things that cops do, or all the things that you shouldn't have to do because you're just a cop, right? It's so many systemic problems in our society.
No, it is, and it's why we have at peaceful protests, riot gear. We have soldiers show up, like our thumbnail. They look like they're getting ready to take Fallujah. And there's a whole bunch of Zoomers protesting police violence sitting on the ground in our thumbnail for this video. That's such a profound picture of what's wrong. You know, that if you give police officers all of this responsibility and then suit them up like soldiers with weapons of war, what do you think's gonna happen? I mean, I could be in elementary school and tell you what's gonna happen. They're going to use the tools you give them for their job. They're going to. Yes. I think that when I say defund the police, I'm going with what that statement has meant since the 1960s, through the 80s and the drug war, and made popular again by Black Lives Matter, which does not mean you'll pick up the phone and dial 911 and no one will be there. It'll just be crickets. like I said, I watched Fox News for this, and those brain cells I'll never get back. However, I learned that their biggest fear and the fear of people who are watching is that who will protect them? Who what will happen if someone breaks in and they need to call 911? There will be no more cops. And that is a false narrative of a that has nothing to do with what this is at all. We will always have police officers in some sort. In some sort. Even if some cities decide to demolish the entire police force and start from the bottom up and redo it, there will still be 911 that you call in an emergency. So policing wasn't ever meant to solve all those problems that Mac and I have just talked about. They just weren't. If you want to go even farther back in history, which this story has nothing to do with, but is connected to, slave patrols existed because slaves never agreed to be slaves. They never wanted it, no matter what the books say in Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi. They never wanted it. They were
What about
kidnapped.
in Ohio?
Oh, definitely not in Ohio, and definitely not in Idaho either. Definitely wrong. Nobody that was enslaved was just ecstatic because now they went from starving in Africa to being able to have whatever was fed to them, whether they liked it or not, and have to work from sunup to sundown and have their family members sold off. So slave patrols were set up because nobody wanted to be a slave. They needed some way to patrol the streets and collect these slaves. Well, when slaves were set free, we already had all these people that patrolled the streets. What would be the best thing would be to use them for policing. So policing has an awkward history we need to deal with too as well. That being said, I want to talk about how police was never meant to solve all these problems and why it's so important to defund the police. And I'm going to make my argument. Through a healthcare worker's lens, too many healthcare workers struggle to get basic PPE, especially during a freaking pandemic. While local small town police don themselves in head to toe war gear, looking like military invasion occupation for the protests showing up. Everybody's seen the live footage. Coronavirus budget cuts, as they're being coined. Many only cut the police's budget by 5%, while cutting healthcare by 12%. This is for coronavirus, people. We have to pay attention to these policies being written because they're saying it does cut police for corona, but they're not telling you it cuts healthcare by 12% too, so that our healthcare professionals can have protective gear. So we've got to pay more attention to these things. I know the round peg doesn't fit in the square hole when trying to imagine why or how a local government would cut 12% from healthcare. I understand that. I don't know either. I don't know how that is something that they get away with. And it's going to take us citizens reading the bills to find these disparities. This isn't what I meant by defund the police. It's not all this craziness and having to pay attention to everything. It's very simple. Here's how defund the police should be explained. It's a proposal and a societal push to take the billions and billions of dollars that cities spend on their police forces and just move this funding to other more qualified to remedy our contemporary problems and issues of each individual city, like housing, jobs, education, homelessness services, healthcare, including mental health care, youth and community development. Defund the police is a radical title on purpose, people. It's like a catchy thumbnail that makes you watch a video on YouTube and you literally clicked on it because of the thumbnail. That's why Defund the Police was chosen. But Defund the Police is a way to rethink public and societal safety because our current setup isn't set up to treat everyone equally, and you have to know that. Minneapolis, for example, their police force since 2016 recently has received body cams for everyone, bias training, and started a duty to intervene policy. If a cop witnesses another cop or cops doing something immoral or unethical or forceful using force when they shouldn't, they are supposed to step in and speak up via this new policy. However, Minneapolis is where George Floyd was just killed, surrounded by other officers. So is it working? Who didn't do a damn thing? These cops for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Is it working? Like, I just, these police officers were just there while one of them had a knee in someone's neck until his life was gone. So, body cams, bias training, and a new policy to step up and say something is the same city where this happened. So, I like the idea of let's try something, give it our all, and if it doesn't work, let's try something else. Like, there's no reason to keep doing it. So, okay, Fox News propaganda. I've touched on it a couple times. How do we see? Huh?
Hooray, Fox News propaganda. Hooray.
Yeah. How do we stay safe? How do we stay safe if there's no police? If we call 911 and nobody answers? The radical left is trying to take everything away from us. Our heritage, our history, our statues, and now the police. It's literally what they were saying. Can't make that shut up. That's not the reality of Defund the Police. And I hope you guys are intelligent enough to know at least that. This isn't about just cutting police budgets and then what with that money? I mean, there's billions. If we cut it, it's got to go somewhere. So it isn't about just taking your police away from you. The main proponent of this is to redistribute those funds, to keep them in the city whose budget it is that we're cutting and getting redistributed. So that city isn't losing anything. It's not losing police officers. It's not losing funding. Redistributing these resources will create better responses to crime. And we have data to show it. So same budget for police would now include that 1.9 billion a year in Chicago or New York. That same budget would now include police, crisis intervention team or teams, depending on the size of the city, mental health team or teams, deciding on the city, social workers. Inside those social workers will be people equipped to deal with sex workers and the specific needs that they have, whether it be education, clean condoms. There's so much in that. I personally support sex work. I think it should be taxed and regulated, and I mean, it's never going to end. So it's the oldest business. I think we should protect the people in it.
I was going to say that's the oldest business on the books.
Yeah, stepping out. It is the oldest, as far as we know. Before there was money, there was poontang. So I can be serious.
Were you not being serious?
No. Poontang is, I've been waiting for a moment to be able to say that word. Are you kidding me? It's one of those words that is just epic in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and now I just brought it back.
I heard George Carlin say it yesterday. I was like,
Did you? I love Carlin.
yeah.
So also those social workers we would also have addiction specialists, clean needle exchanges, housing and education, and jobs. All of that would be included if we defund the police into the police's budget, all of which will protect our communities better, faster, actually fix issues. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do would pretty much be the policy. We have a shit ton of work to do, people. I promise you. We need to spread the truth of what defund the police truly means. And each one of you that's listening, it's your job. It's your job to at least talk to a few people. Have you heard about that defund the police? Hey, I looked it up. It actually means this. I'm kind of cool with it. What do you think? Remember that you're talking to people who may or may not agree with you, and it's okay. What you want to do is not change their mind, is just actually give them facts so that they can make their mind up with factual information. The defund the police and what it truly means. So, and that I say to everyone who hears this message, start conversations, make sure that the people around you are honestly aware of the facts. Because in a poll that was done in early June 2020, we're in June 2020 right now, it showed that only a quarter polled were in favor of defunding the police. Most people didn't understand what it meant, and they're fearful that it means that they'll dial 911 and nobody will answer. So it's our job as citizens who are informed to help inform our fellow brothers and sisters. But there is good news, and I wanted to end it with good news. In Denver, the school board voted to phase police out of their school districts completely. And with that same funding, they're going to be adding nurses and counselors. In Oakland, the school board and superintendent both backed the elimination of district police. They want district police completely out. There are many cities that have been doing this. Austin, Texas did this a couple years ago. They didn't wait for this mess. They started redistributing police budget. They took that pie chart and how it was split in half and half of it went to the police. They said, no, we need inside that same budget, we need addiction specialists and all kinds of social work and help. We don't need to punish people who need help. That's wrong. It's immoral. And I don't want to fund a system that punishes people that need help. So let's see that. And in Minneapolis, the city where George Floyd was just murdered, the city council unanimously voted to replace police with a community-led model. Unanimous, all across the board. They voted to completely disband the police department and try something totally different. And I say, here, here. I moved my camera. I've got magic hands. And all of these votes, these policy changes, and even winning over the Americans' hearts and minds have come directly from our brothers and sisters in the streets, like you and me, doing these little things where we get together and talk about these things. And I want to say that not just that, it mostly comes from our brothers and sisters who are in the streets and their continued public pressure against police brutality. I mean, I remember counting, 16 days of protest, 17 days of protest. It's way past that. Every day I wake up and see people in the streets, and I'm so proud of them. It's because of that pressure that we're getting policy changes. That's what matters. Hearts and minds changing is the first step to policy changes. So it's very important. Because of the beautiful civil disobedience Defund the police went from a slogan of Black Lives Matter smack dab to the mainstream talking head shows. Like I said, I watched them for you guys for this. And just a matter of weeks, people, see what we could do? I mean, literally, we need capes. That's how good we are about this stuff. Hashtag defund the police. Add that a place or two. Try to get some people to conversate, even if they disagree. It's a great way to say, well, I did too. And then I looked into it, and talk and be kind. Kindness matters more than anything else. We'll win hearts and minds with kindness, not violence. Add Black Lives Matter. I don't care if you're white, especially if you're white. Add Black Lives Matter to things. Women didn't win the right to vote until men marched with them. Black people didn't win the right to vote until white people marched with them. It's going to take a human movement to make this, like I said, kindness matters. Kindness matters more than anything else. And if there's one thing that I think I hope I instilled in both of my daughters is that kindness is the most important thing. There's a time and a place to be assertive, and you can be kind and assertive at the same time, but kindness matters most of all. How we treat each other matters most of all. Um, all we have is each other, guys. There's nothing in the sky looking down on us. It's just us. There's no magic force fields or quantum things that we don't understand yet where we can pray to. That doesn't exist. Magic doesn't exist. We exist. And if we want change, we have to be a part of the change that we want to see. And we can do that with kindness. And that's all I had to say about defund the police. Spread it. Spread it around like the herp. Make it the herpes of activism.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, do
I hope
it.
it spreads.
Give it to everyone.
Good way to end it.
Yeah.
That was good. All right. Well, I think we had some pretty heavy topics tonight, and we did them in a really, really light way. I'm really happy with this. I hope everyone enjoyed the show tonight. What are we doing next week, Christy? Do we already know or do we not know? I know we haven't talked about it.
Real quick to the chat, I did want to add something that's very important that I would like you to listen to. And let's see. I would really, really like you to listen to it. And I actually might have to. I watched it on a different device, and I'm not tech savvy. Actually, I'm tech illiterate. That is an appropriate term for what goes on in here, because none of it. Yes, no, I'm an analog girl in a digital world. For real. Oh goodness. Okay, so where was it? And it's so important, and it's right before what you made me watch. So I will actually have to probably put it underneath the video instead of in the chat, because I'm gonna have to look for it, and I don't want to waste our viewers' time looking for it. I thought it was the last thing that I watched, but apparently it kept playing videos like autoplay after I was out of it, and it was shut. Damn you, Apple! It's an important talk, and I love that it's in Alabama, and I love that it is a Black man giving a speech, and I would say 99% of the audience is white Alabamians, and it's about statues, it's about them coming down, it's about the real history and the narrative, and how the South won the narrative. It's so important. And he gives sources on every single claim he makes. It's beautiful. So I will put it underneath this. Please come back to the video after it's been posted. It will be there. because I think that after you watch it, you should share it to everyone. I actually shared it to a few people today as well. And there's also a woman named Dr. Robin DiAngelo, and she has a discussion called white fragility. And I find that if that makes you uncomfortable as a white person, good, fucking listen to her because it should. And there's no such thing as a human in America with white or lighter skin who hasn't laughed at a racist joke, who hasn't done something. And I'm not saying that makes you a bad person. It doesn't at all. She breaks it all down, and I will attach that as well. I think that they go together very well.
It's a really good video. I
yeah.
watched it a while back, and then I watched another couple of hours of her talking.
Oh yeah, she's got lots of work out there. Lots of work, and she loves being called out when she calls it, when I put my racism on someone else, I want to be called out in public. I'd rather it be in public as a learning example, so that I can also show that being called out shouldn't make you defensive. Take it as a learning experience. Thank you. I didn't think of it like that. Gosh, you gave me a lot to think about.
She's
I'm
really
sorry. Yeah, I it's very important that we learn to not be so goddamn fragile. Quit being so scared. I don't know.
It's a safe place. You don't have to be scared, Christy.
Yeah, it's all we have is us. So, like we always say, stay humanist for God's sakes.